Hey, I'm Pastor Mark, and we're here today with a great friend, Doug Jacobs. Doug and I have been friends about 20 years, and
Yeah.
we're really glad to have you. He was at our church yesterday, and welcome, Doug.
Thanks. Yeah, we had a great weekend. It's been fun to reconnect and to, get a feel for how excited your church is about their part in what's happening around the world.
And
for
I know you
God.
go to all of these different churches around the country, but I know this is your favorite church in Maryland. I know
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
So-
yeah, right up there among our favorite. No, we really is a special place.
You defend
It's
a lot of
special
people,
place
but I
for
know
us.
it's one of the best. Well, listen, talk to me about just your own walk, sort of your background,
okay.
and then
Okay.
how you came to faith.
Yeah. Well, born into like a really not just Christian family, but a family that just loved God. It was who they were. My mom and dad, they just loved it. They just loved serving God. They loved God's people. There was nothing like fake or unreal about them. They were exactly the same at home. We prayed together. They just were excited to be doing something for God, and it didn't change. My whole life growing up, seeing them, and growing up in a home like that, we had prayer every night.
So they weren't
Yeah.
pastors.
No, they weren't pastors. They weren't even on any kind of official staff or anything. They just they had my mom and dad had been like high school sweethearts, but they were both like really strong believers. It was just and so their marriage just became that, and they would go around helping churches. My dad, being an electrical contractor, he would get jobs in different places where he thought, well, this church needs some help. It's just a new church just getting started. So they moved a little bit doing that, and then in the small town where these are all just kind of outside Mobile, Lower Alabama, that area, and they just loved it. There was never that sense of, oh, we got to do this. It was their passion and their life, and everything fit around that. So that's what I grew up in.
So you grew up in that, but was
Yeah.
there a time that you questioned it?
Absolutely, and that being our life and all, but toward the end of high school, I kind of looked around, at other people, and they had different faith, and some of them no faith, and I think that started the question of like, well, if I had been born in a different family, if I wasn't a part of this, would I believe like that? Is this just something that I've accepted without ever really analyzing it, without it really being mine? It was just like what our family did. It was kind of what the church did, and it was real, but it wasn't the same kind of thoughtfulness in this. So I started that path, and as I finished high school, left, started going to college, and began to read other things and hear other things and have a faith challenge that had never been challenged before. I started to think this is just what I've accepted as a child because that's what my parents did.
So, like just yesterday, we were talking to a couple, and they said, pray for my grandson. He's 17 years old, never gets a lick treble,
Right.
but now has question, is God even real? Does he exist?
Yeah.
Grew up in the church.
Yeah.
So how did your folks process this?
Yeah.
And how,
Well, it's tough on us all. Like, as I went exactly the same thing. I would have had those exact same questions, and at times I was pretty well convinced that no, that's just something that something we do. It's just culture, and that was sort of, I started to study culture and things, and but each one of these kind of journeys that I go on, the path that I go on, was just emptiness. I would get there and I was like, no, that's nothing, and so I changed schools 7 times. I was just like, trying everything, and along the way, I started trying all kinds of things as well. I got into drugs. I got into a lifestyle that
were you
was
struggling
part
with
of
with
that.
your life, who you were, or was it because that foundation had been strong as a young guy? Now there was like no boundaries, or what?
Yeah. When you start, I think when we start to sort of not have an anchor, not have a guide, and you're just going with whatever feels good in the moment. You wander into all kind of things, because there's no reason not to. You don't see that, but of course the problems come. The struggles
Yeah.
come. And difficulties come, and it affected everything. And I'm sure that, as my parents have shared, it was just breaking their heart not just because I was, not part of the family in the way I had been before, but because they knew the pain that this was going to bring into my life. Yeah. And it did. I mean, I had struggles, I had problems, serious. and just an emptiness. So as I got toward the end, I remember being a senior in college, and I was pretty much everything was done. I was in last classes, and the professor passed out, knowing that most of us was senior class, right? He passed out a little 3x5 card, and we were to write on there like a few things, what our plan was and then what our ambition was. And I just sat there staring at this card, was blank, and I had nothing to say after. This was 5 years of searching, of looking, and it's backed up from that. And I thought, wow, this is just nothing. It's just an emptiness, just a nothing. I left the class really, struggling inside that I had never really I've felt that kind of lostness before. Just a lostness.
So your family, great family,
Yeah.
loved you through that.
Yeah, they did.
And they kept praying.
Oh yeah, and they kept loving. I mean, my parents didn't choose the kind of, we're not going to have anything to do with you. No, it was nothing like that. They just kept loving, and they just kept reaching out, and they knew that, I was struggling in a lot of areas, and the problems starting to come in because of things I was involved in. But they just kept loving. There was no, backup to their love. At the same time, of course, they didn't encourage any of that. But
was there a time those 5 years that you said maybe I should go back, or?
Yeah, there was many times, where there was
we got not back to what you knew, but back to your own faith. Or
Yeah.
Back to your own.
Definitely. It was like I would sort of, but then I would question that, and that's why I kept changing schools and trying different things, because it was sort of like, well, do I turn back this way? Do I go this way? Well, after realizing the complete emptiness of that, the lostness of that, and in 5 years, I think at that moment, it wasn't like an overnight where I just like, okay, now I know it's, but I began to say, there is something that continues to love inside. There is something that I feel. There's something that's real in the experience of knowing God that was real, where everything else became emptiness and nothing. And in those moments, God in His love just continues to have His presence there for you, and to the degree that I would open my heart to that. So then I again began to go to church a little more often, though it wasn't like I'm back in. I was just less of saying, oh, no, I'm not going to go. I would go, and it was occasional, and then a little more often, and then it was in a service. There in the church, and the pastor, sometimes you guys do. You kind of get off your main topic and you kind of wander down.
Never happens.
It never happens
That's
to you,
right,
but
right.
there are those who wander off a little bit. And he was wandering off the topic and starting to talk about things that connected with my life from when I was growing up, and how that I realized that even through all that, God was putting people in my life that this pastor happened to know some of those. He didn't even know I was there. So he's talking about these things that were in his life, but we had overlapping points in our life where people had spoken into my life. That's how I kind of connect to missions, is because there were people, and many of them were missionaries, that I have met growing up, and the purpose that they had in their life, the sense of passion that was just all together, their love for God, their understanding of God, but also what that did for their life, that began to happen in that service. That began to happen, and I just heard that sense of God's voice, saying all of that really is there for you. Is just right here through my love.
So before we leave this part, I think a lot of folks who maybe listen at some point might want to know, did you talk about the lostness you felt through those 5 years?
Yeah.
Did you feel an aloneness or a distance from God? Or like He was upset with you or mad at you, angry? Or did you feel like He just was not
Just couldn't go with me. That's how I felt. Not
He
like an
couldn't go
anger.
with
He
you?
couldn't go with me because, the direction, and it was a bit like my parents in the sense that there was still the love, there was still that sense, but when you are going to do things and you're involved in things and you're headed down a path, that as far as the activities, as far as questioning and searching, I never felt, a sense that that's a bad thing to do. Not at all. In fact, my faith after going through a time like that was so much stronger because there were things that I had never really questioned that needed to be questions. Things that we just kind of like, oh, well, this is sort of church culture that really we don't need to necessarily take with us. those kind of questionings. I never felt that was something that
Like
God
what
wanted to
things?
punish.
Let's go. What things?
Okay. All right. All right.
I mean, it's
Well,
too easy because I'm just thinking about because every one of us have our own mindset about what that thing is.
Yeah.
Just Jesus,
Yeah.
just His love for you,
Yeah.
and all the other trappings that sometimes
Yeah.
get in the way.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, everybody I think expresses their feelings toward God in different ways, and sometimes in the church we want to dictate how that's
there you
done.
go.
Okay, you've got to do it a certain way. You've got to raise your hands this way, or you have to raise your hands, or you have to do
Yeah.
you have to be a person that does it this way, or else you're incomplete. You're not fully in, and each of us express in a different way. And this was really helpful, jumping ahead. This was really helpful having examined that and begun to work through the process of separating what's just kind of our American culture and the way we sort of do things with what really God is asking of us. And some of those are not necessarily bad, but we don't, they're not necessary either. And so when we began to go to other countries, it was great to have started to examine that process a little bit, because when we went somewhere else, we don't need to take that. We need to just take, the relationship with God and let them express it.
Sometimes we get like, it's easy for us to point fingers at other groups and other churches maybe and say, look at all the things you've added.
Yeah.
We've added our own stuff too.
Yeah.
And that are not necessarily bad stuff, but they
Right.
become more important than the real stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and they can be a bit of a barrier to people who come in because since they aren't necessary, if it's something that makes them feel really uncomfortable and maybe the way that they would express themselves that doesn't at all work for them, then we've instead of having a bridge into helping them to know God, we've kind of put some things that you got to do these things. It's easy to look at the old times and they made people dress a certain way, wear certain things on their head or whatever, but we still have them and we need to examine those. And that was a good process for me because it helped me to examine my faith and see this is faith. Some of these are expressions of faith.
Good. So fast forward now, you're at that point in the church. You're sensing God's presence in your life. You're saying, okay, I got to make a decision. Was there like a one moment or was it gradual?
Kind of was. It had been gradual up to a moment. And I will say, in that moment, by that time I got married, and my wife and I were in a church just, showing up about once a month.
Wait.
Yeah.
Okay, so you meet Ramona.
Yes.
Is she walking for Jesus?
She's better than me, but she's ahead of me.
That's always been the case.
She's not really questioning her faith like I am, but we also are not, at the place where we have been, growing up either. So both of us were in a bit of a journey, though. For her, she didn't detach, as much as I did. So here we are, and kind of in the still searching, but moving in a direction toward a place with God. But there was a moment in the service, and the pastor's rambling around, and he's talking about this guy he knew and that guy he knew, and those people had spoken into my life, and it's all coming together. But in that moment, there was two things that were just like here. One was God, still loving me, still drawing me, still wanting me, but at the same time, there was a sense of warning that I was at a crossroads, and if I continued at this point, it was going to be so much more difficult to get back, because the choices that we make, they do have consequences. And as much as God loves us and he'll walk with us and he's there to bring us back, what he has to bring us back from when we cross lines and we take steps that are so harmful, it breaks his heart. But those consequences are tough to come back from, and I felt that sense of warning. So it was both. It wasn't an unloving warning; it was a very loving warning that this is a moment for me and God together.
Did you and Ramona sort of feel the same thing at the same time, or was she pushing you? You said she was better than you were.
Yeah.
Was she pushing, or was she
wasn't
like
really pushing as much as leading by being a little bit ahead, I think, and that. But neither one of us were really, like saying, okay, we're in it. We're really completely, focused, and this is going to be who we are. It was more of a tangent part of our life. We're just kind of, church was on the edge, but it was more there than it had been for me before we got married. But at that point, I felt that, and in the moment of saying yes, you really love me, God, and you've been here through all of this, and you want what's best for me. You're the only reason that you've put these things as stay away from this and get out of this is out of love.
Yeah.
There wasn't like he's just got rules for nothing.
Yeah.
We use the term in churches, we say the word holy or holiness and these sorts of things. And that's just an expression of God's love.
Yeah.
That he wants to save us. He wants to keep us from the pain that comes from those kind of things. Not only the emptiness, but all of the other things that come.
I heard someone say that the Ten Commandments are not given to keep you from having fun, but to keep you from hurting yourself.
Hurting yourself.
And I think that's a really great.
Yeah.
I think the perspective of God has got to change for all of us.
Yeah.
It's not like he's like mean trying to think,
No,
man,
it's
you can't
all
do
love.
that. Yeah, it is all love.
All love.
Because he knows the end. He knows what's going to happen.
That's right. And he has nothing but the best for us.
Yeah.
In his desires.
And, just for a second, this is a tangent that the pastors don't
Okay.
go on.
But never.
But yeah, it never happened. But you think of the grace of God, not only in your life, my life, folks who are listening's life. I mean, that he doesn't give up.
All right.
Which is crazy to me. Because, the number of times we've said no to God about whatever, and he just keeps coming after you, It's sort of that hound of heaven kind of thing. Not in a bad way, but just, I can't give up on you because I love you that much.
Yeah.
Which is pretty phenomenal when you think about it.
It is. And I think that we have experienced that personally, and having experienced it personally, it helps us not to give up on others as well.
Yeah.
And we see them,
Good word.
people that we love, and we just want to spare them some of the pains and things. But at the same time, there is a sense of tough love, and I get that a bit of saying, okay, we can't go there with you, of course, but just never turning our back, because God is so patient and so loving, and he will help us to be that way, with others. And I got to say thanks to my parents, because they never, through all of it, no, it had to hurt them to see me hurting, because that kind of lifestyle is heartbreaking for everybody. And they just continued to love, and they prayed like anything.
God.
Yeah, my mom, she's told me, like after, like so many times she would find things in the scripture, a promise, and she would pray that over me, and she would just, hold on to that, believing that there would be the time when I would just really realize how much God loved me, and that all of that, would be the foundation for an understanding of who he is. And there's still questions. There's still questions. There's still things that we're not able to completely understand about God in that as you walk our lives, but through the relationship with him, the understanding keeps coming.
I don't think it's ever bad to ask questions.
No,
I think relationship. I mean, honestly, Doug, I'm learning things about you I didn't know today just from talking like this.
Yeah.
But I think that relationship is built stronger when I know where you're coming from.
Right.
And so I've always told people, don't stop asking God questions.
No way.
Just listen when he wants to give you the answers.
Yeah.
Or trust when you don't know all the answers. And that's the hardest part for us, because we have to figure it out.
And put yourself in a place to hear the answers that God may speak through others to you. And that's why, getting involved in some connection to where teaching, discipleship, we call it in the church circles, we use discipleship, but it's really just helping us with understanding about God and how it applies to our life, how we're to live that out, receiving that from those that are around us, that God will help us to get those answers. Sometimes it comes direct, obviously, as we read, his word, but then there's others, teachers that God is
You ever think,
given
Doug,
abilities.
about where your path would have gone had you not said yes?
Yeah,
I mean,
because I got friends who kind of went through the same experience, and they never returned in the emptiness, the broken relationships. They're just, their life is just and I see them like now, I've been out of school a long time, and I see them, but they're just empty and no purpose, and they're right. In that same cycle of, this is going to bring the fulfillment in my life. This is going to bring purpose, and it lasts just a while, and then nothing, and then another and another and another.
We can go in a lot of different directions. I want to go one direction before we talk about your call,
Okay.
Into missions, Because I think for a lot of folks who are millennials, now they're trying to find out what is my purpose in life.
Yeah, sure.
And I don't know if it's because
Sure.
my generation has sort of abdicated sort of that push sometimes, or whatever it might be. But I think the idea is, I think a lot of millennials want to find out, okay, what's going to happen that all of a sudden, the light bulb goes off and everything is good.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, in your process of even saying yes to God in the call,
Right.
after going through 5 years of struggle,
Yeah.
I mean, real hard struggle.
Yeah, it was.
And then to the point of saying, what's switched on in that? Of course, it's a different era, and I understand that too, but what was the switch that said, I have my purpose? You mentioned about missionaries who used to come by your church, and it helped motivate you, but
it did,
I'm just trying to think about folks who might be listening to say, all right, I don't know where that is, what should I do, and how will I know when I get there?
Well, I think for me, it began with a commitment on my part to say, I'm all in. Whatever it is that God is leading me toward, I'm going to trust that that's going to bring the joy and the purpose and the fulfillment, and that's going to make life worth living. That I come to that place of trust because of the relationship I feel with Him, because of the love I feel. And so I took that step to that day, on the way home from the church that day. I told Ramona that I said, okay, I don't know where this is going, but this is it for me. I'm all in here, and whatever, I'll do it. Whatever.
Wow.
And that was a complete and absolute, turning over to God and trusting that the steps that He was gonna lead were gonna continue that sense of His love in my heart. So we, it's kind of like at that moment it was a complete end, and so we thought, well, we need to start preparing ourselves for whatever God may lead us to, and so we did. We just began to look for opportunities for training, for ourselves, and to see what might happen, and the steps started coming fast. Once it was a complete on my part, the steps started coming quickly, and we were within like a month, we were at a Bible college.
In 1 month.
Yeah, we were like, we just left and sold everything and packed it all into the back of a pickup truck, and I mean, because once it was all in, once it was complete, there was just this like tremendous sense of certainty, that I had never felt. And so we packed up a pickup truck and we drove to the school, and we were like calling them as we're going, saying, hey, is it okay? Can we come? And we weren't able to be fully in because we're so late, getting in. And then we just took a few classes. We found a church that was there, and we just went to the pastor and we said, hey, we'll do anything, We're all in. We don't know what God's going to do with us. We don't know where this is going, but we're 100% in. and so he goes, well, we need help in the nursery and somebody to clean the toilets. And we're like, that's us. We're in. And just step by step from there.
How old were you then?
We were about 23, 24. We had both been through the whole college experience, and graduated, and there we were. We're just like, we'll do anything, we'll do everything.
You said something really interesting there when you talked about the call, when you really turned it over to Jesus. That was almost an acceptance of His call in your life. You said whatever you want.
Yeah, and we didn't know exactly what that would look like, but we did feel, I don't think we felt either of us that time that we'd be like full time or anything like in the sense of that would be our career sort of thing. It wasn't that kind of a thought. It was just, this is going to be our life and everything. Because of course, we went where the Bible school was, and we got jobs and we're working, but everything was now about serving God and the love for Him. And it was the most fun time of our life. It was so exciting because, suddenly we go from an emptiness from what's the point? That kind of a thing all the time. Well, what's the point? To this, no matter what we were doing, we had 2-3 jobs all the time, these little part-time jobs, just trying to put it together. But they all had a sense of the why was being answered. And of course, our relationship with God, when we get in obedience with God, then the relationship just gets closer and closer. Instead of just knowing that he's there and feeling something on the outside, we're just constantly now growing in our relationship with God and our relationship with each other. Wow. That was a tremendous change.
So how long were you in that training period?
So we went to school for like a couple of years, and then from there had an opportunity to go South America. And we went there for 6 months straight out of school. And these experiences were just amazing for us. We just kept thinking, wow, I can't believe, from this little town in Alabama that these things are happening. When God had all this already, I guess, lined up, and we could see that. That these people that he would bring into our lives, this was just happening quickly for us. So we were down there for like 6 months and, studying Spanish and helping, whatever was going on, missions and outreaches to poor places. And it just felt like life was just really so much worth living. And these pieces were coming together for us.
So do you think you need a lifetime there in South America?
I think so. At the beginning, we thought, oh, wow, this is amazing. We're going to do this forever. But after about 6 months, the assignment was for 6 months where it worked. So we definitely were going to be coming back. And we began to think, okay, somewhere in a cross-cultural sense, because there was just something for us that was so exciting about moving from our culture and seeing how that the love of God, people's love for God, would be expressed in other cultures in completely different ways than what we were seeing. It was so beautiful to us that we really felt that there was something there. And Ramona, my wife, had felt that God was speaking to her in that direction since she was like a teenager. So this was all kind of, we were being reminded of things, that God had brought into our life from before. So it was starting to fit together.
Good word. So from there, South America, how do you get transitioned to Nepal?
Yeah. Well, because South America and Central America are the only places that we had connection to outside the U.S., that was the only other culture kind of life that we had known. We kind of thought that's where it was going to go. And we began to take short trips and assist others with trips and, some a little bit longer and doing things, mostly in Central America at that point. And we were, by that time, there was a church that asked us to be involved with their outreaches, both in their communities that were, different types of communities around where the church was. And we loved that. But that church was also involved with coordinating trips, not just for their church, but for a lot of groups into Central America. So this was starting to be a part of our life. And we loved it. We really felt that was going to be more and more of our future. But as we began to focus on the possibility of receiving this invitation to Nicaragua, we began to pray very specifically for that place, and we kind of thought that's where we were going to invest our lives. And through that, we had grown in our relationship to God, where we were able to sense a kind of a positive, a push when there were things that were a yes, but we're also starting to grow in our relationship with God, where in our prayer time we could feel like that's that we're not feeling peace in that direction. That's not feeling good in our spirit as we're praying about that. And so that was a great opportunity in Nicaragua, but we really felt in our prayer that God was saying, that's for somebody else, and that God has something else for us. And that sort of was not the natural path, because the natural path would have led us to that. As we're working exactly.
You learn the language.
We know the people, we learn the language, we're making connections. But in that, we really began to feel that, and that was because we had grown in our relationship.
So it was not a voice that God said, "Don't do that."
It was a booming, and I don't think that He would have been like punished us or anything like that. It was a great opportunity, but there was something else that God, had for us that He had been preparing. That was for us, and someone else that would be a better fit. Their abilities or gifts and everything would be better there. We sensed both, that it wasn't like we're leaving that opportunity. It's not going to happen. It's going to happen, but somebody else is God's God's person for that. And so we started praying at that point, because we were kind of lost, because the natural path was headed that way, and we began to pray. Okay, then if not that, then what? But again, it was the complete sense on our part. Ramona and I were like, we'll do anything. There wasn't, okay, we'll only do within these categories. We were like, okay, is it something here in the U.S., And it doesn't even, for us, it didn't have to be full-time. It didn't have to be a career. It didn't have to be something we got paid to do. We were just laying it out, God, whatever you want. And through that, we began to pray. We had a prayer guide. It was called Unreached People Groups Prayer Guide. And it had people groups from all over the world. And as we prayed through that, when we would get to people groups from the Himalaya Mountains, there's so many unreached people groups there. When we would get to those people groups, we would feel an intensity of the weight that God feels, the heaviness that he feels for people who haven't heard about his love.
Okay, let's talk about that. So, and this has been fantastic so far. And I wish we had like 3 hours. I'm serious, it's good for me. But now you go to Nepal. This is now, the culture is so different because South America, at least there's some kind of religious culture there that you can relate to. There's religious culture in Nepal, but you talk about, it almost goes back full circle to the own lostness you felt.
Exactly.
So how do you guys now at this point, now how many years in Nepal?
Oh, 23. Yeah, 23 years we've been living, working in Nepal.
How do you then sort of make that leap from a person who is ingrained in religion in Nepal, deal with the lostness there, and then have people come to a point of decision?
You know, for us, it's been about realizing that everyone has been created with the ability to know God's presence. You know, starting with that we're not talking to people who are different in that way than us. We've been created with the ability to know, we could say, his voice and know his presence. And not only have we been created with that, we've been created with a longing to know it. And as we realize that, then when we see them involved in whatever religious path that they're on, we know that they're on that path because of that. They're being drawn. So they are seeking, just like we are. They've got the emptiness. They're trying to find it because we've been created with that longing and that drawing back to our Creator, back to that presence, you know, that has created us, that has given us life. That same thing is pulling them. And that same sort of emptiness that I felt in the time when I was searching to find my relationship with God, they're searching.
It's amazing.
And so when we have that approach, instead of saying, "Oh, you're doing everything wrong," no, it's a sense of here is what we can do together. We can walk together with you as your journey toward knowing God, and we can share, you know, how we've come to know God, what we feel in our life, and offer that path to you. And awesome. That's our approach.
Yeah, I've been to Nepal a couple times with you, and to see what God's doing is remarkable.
Yeah.
I know the need is vast. You know, you said yesterday, what is it, less than 1%, less than 2%?
Yeah, it was somewhere around 1% are believers. In a country of 30 million.
Okay,
people.
so let's just put the big questions out here for a second.
Okay.
How in the world are we going to reach people? Let's just say Nepal. How many millions of people in Nepal?
30 million, give or take, right?
Okay.
It's incredibly populated.
So we're talking 300,000 believers.
Yeah.
Roughly.
Yeah, probably about right. Yeah.
So how in the world are we going to get there?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, one is the power of love, the tangible evidence of the power of God's love. When we, even though we're a small group, believers, when we began to show God's love, you know, we go into areas that are extremely poor. We go into areas that have been devastated by earthquakes. You know, we go in with nothing but a desire to care and help. Then that small, you know, kind of effort is seen broadly because it's selfless. You know, we're not going in and saying, okay, we're here for, you know, to get you to do anything. We're just here because God's love compels us. And that message, you know, it spreads. They share it. You know, it's like you know, one to the other. We'll go to a village that may be a long way from a place where we've done something, you know, to care for people, but they'll know about it. You know, word of mouth. But
on top of that word of mouth, you guys, and going back to your own upbringing, you talk about all the extra things. You guys have narrowed down sort of the gospel into stories of Jesus.
That's right.
And that's what you proclaim. You're talking to man, not a religion.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. That is a key for us, is that we're not bringing any kind of culture change for them in the sense of the exterior. All we're here to do is to offer them, you know, the opportunity to know God in a way that they haven't yet. And when we offer that, you know, we say it's just like just the core of our relationship with God, and then let them express that however is relevant for them in their culture, whatever is appropriate for them in their culture. They're going to express it. If it starts from the love and the understanding of who God is, then their expression of that, it's beautiful to see, because it's often very different from what we see in the West and America, whatever. But trying to bring that has been too much of the history of what has happened with religion, trying to export a religious activity, but instead we're just there to express the love, and share the love, and then watch what happens, and it's beautiful to see.
I love the passion you and Ramona still have after these 23 years,
I would definitely,
especially for the unreached and the lost. And I remember you're the first person I think I ever heard the phrase "a person of peace." Find a person of peace, and sort of let that villager, let that person be the key that opens the door. So I asked 2 last questions. Our time's running fast, but this is now about young pastors or people who are thinking about a career in missions.
Okay. Yeah.
Talk to them just for a second.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's
especially where we're at right now. How the world is now, how missions is now.
Right. I think there is something that for those that are going to make this a focus, to cross into another culture, to make the bridge into another culture, that just fascinates. It's a God-given sort of fascination with that of what the expression of God's love can look like, in another culture, another way of doing that, and God begins to give you ideas about how to bridge, into their culture, to see, oh, here's how we could express it there. Here's how we could share it there. There's an excitement around that, and we ask people whenever they start to talk to us about the possibility of coming, what's got you going, and often, that is the case. They're like, well, this fascinates. Always been fascinated by this. Always loved that, and I think that's a God-given kind of that drawing toward that sort of a ministry focus.
It's almost like God puts it in your heart before He even calls you.
It does.
And then you say, this is fulfilling what God's called.
Yeah, because I had no idea I was going to do it, but I ended up, getting a degree in cultural anthropology, sociology. These sorts of things were fascinating to me, and never realized that it was going to be that sort of thing.
Okay, last question, and then we're done. Last question, how do you and Ramona, after all these years, stay fresh? You travel all the time. You're in churches all the time. And most of the time when you're in churches, you're speaking.
We do.
And then you're in Nepal, and you're out around the world. You're in Sri Lanka, and Nepal, and India, and elsewhere. How do you guys stay fresh personally? Because I think that's not just for pastors or missionaries. That's for everybody.
Right. That's a great question. I mean, we even see Apostle Paul says, like, I win the world but lose my own soul, or that kind of thoughts. And it's all about realizing that really it's about a relationship with God, a relationship with Him, and everything else has to flow out of that. Everything else has to be overflow from your relationship. And that's where you see Scripture, giving us disciplines. And again, discipline, it sounds like, oh, okay, those are the harsh things. You had to be a monk and go, not speak for 6 years. Those are not at all what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the discipline to say, I need to just hang out with God. And I do that. For me, I'll read Scripture, and as I'm reading, like stories in Old Testament, stories in New Testament, it prompts me. It makes me think of, in my life, this is what God is saying. And He speaks to me, and I feel a closeness. And sometimes it's just, after reading, that's usually how it starts. After reading, and just pause and realize, He has created me to be His child. Just I'm a friend of God. I have this real relationship, and just renew that. Just hanging out with God and just renew that, and then everything flows from there. And I have to be disciplined because you get so busy, and we're always sharing and going places that I can be working for God and serving God and not have a relationship with Him, and just be an employee.
And that's when the trouble comes.
Oh, everything goes wrong.
Yeah.
Because when it's not flowing out of the closeness with God, then, it is work. It is us. And
just looking back at these last moments, you think about raised in a religious home, and you believed it, but it was not yours. It becomes yours.
Yeah.
And that yours in Him has to grow. And that's one thing I love about you.
Good.
That as long as I've known you, we talk at our church about being authentic, and, just being authentic today, and having you share here this morning. is pretty amazing. But I just think it's neat, the time frame of God. From before the time you were born, he knew exactly what make you happy, but also make you content, but also challenge you.
Yeah.
So
Oh yeah. Yeah. And when you realize that along the way, it's kind of like gives you the confidence to know that even though there's going to be challenges and these problems, those challenges and troubles, they have a purpose. You're not just going through problems like I was when I was out of God's plan, where it's problems because I've brought them on myself. They're problems. But these have purpose, and that something's going to come out of this. God is working through that. He's making it together for his good. So, yeah, it's a great life. It's an exciting life. We're just honored to be, a part of whatever God is doing, and that he would love us so much that he would have a plan and show it to us.
I'm glad we can do this together.
This was fun.
Thanks so much, man. I was so glad you came by to talk today, too, as well.
Thank you for what you've meant in my life. I appreciate you. I really do.
You guys challenge me all the time. Every time I think about you challenge me more. But thanks for being here today.
Thank you. This was a blast. Thanks a lot.
I hope you'll join us in the future, and all you have to do so is hit the subscribe button there on the screen now. We look forward to hearing back from you and seeing what's going on. So if you have feedback, contact us at the website at cag.org. God bless you. Have a fantastic week, and thanks for joining the journey with us.